What if I told you the power you've been chasing doesn't live in the light, but in the darkness you've been avoiding? That the crown you long for isn't hidden in triumph, but buried in the very wounds you tried to silence. This is the secret myths whisper, and Jungian psychology dares to confirm. To rise, you must first descend. Picture yourself in a blooming garden. Suddenly the ground shatters beneath your feet. A rupture, a fall, heartbreak, betrayal, loss, each one a chariot dragging you into your personal underworld. The real question is not why it happened, but who you will be when you return. Persephone, the maiden of spring, was torn from innocence and carried into the abyss. But when she returned, she wore a crown. She was never the same queen again, and neither will you be. Once you accept the descent as part of your own becoming, the unconscious is not your enemy. It is your initiation, the hidden path to individuation and true power. This is not a tragedy, it's an awakening. The shadow you fear is the teacher you need. The silence you resist is the doorway you must cross. Every scar is a seed, and every seed, when swallowed, summons a queen or a king within. So listen closely. The myth of Persephone is not distant. It is your reflection in the mirror. And tonight, the abyss whispers. To find your crown, you must first descend into your own hell. Are you ready? There is a silence in the Garden of Beginnings, a silence perfumed by untouched flowers. Persephone once wandered there, childlike, her hands brushing petals that had never known the weight of winter. We know this phase well, the moment when innocence shields us, when we still believe light alone defines the world. But even beneath innocence, a seed stirs, a secret longing, an unconscious hunger for what waits in the shadows. In daily life, it appears as the young professional who trusts every promise, or the woman who wears her smile like a crown of spring. On the surface, everything blooms. And yet, late at night, something unsettles the soul. Whispers of a destiny waiting at the edge of awareness. Carl Jung would say, the unconscious is already at work, quietly weaving the threads that will one day pull her downward. Persephone's innocence was never weakness. It was a prelude. For the archetypal world demands contrast. Light calls for darkness. The self cannot be born without trembling before the shadow. So the girl wandering among flowers is not merely naive. She is already the threshold of the queen-to-be, still unaware of the crown that requires a descent into the underworld. Perhaps you have felt it too. That subtle rupture beneath your certainties, the first betrayal, the sudden illness, the dream that refuses to fade at dawn. They are not accidents, they are doorways. Just as Hades' chariot tore the earth open for Persephone, life also opens passages when the unconscious calls for individuation. The descent begins in the most ordinary of moments, but she does not yet know. She still bends to smell the narcissus, unaware that its roots sink deep into darkness. This is the fragile beauty of beginnings, the illusion that we can live without confronting our depths. And yet the earth is already trembling. Something waits beneath, and once it rises, she will never be the same queen again. It always begins with a rupture. The earth, once steady, once green, splits open with violent silence. Persephone's cry echoes into the abyss as she is pulled downward, torn from the familiar embrace of spring. And so it is with us. One day, life shatters the ground beneath our feet, and we are swallowed into an underworld we never asked to enter. Jungian psychology reminds us this is not destruction, it is initiation. Though in the moment it feels like exile, the rupture takes many forms: heartbreak, the loss of purpose, the sudden collapse of certainty. A woman who thought her life was safe discovers betrayal. A man who built his world on success feels only the emptiness inside. These are not accidents. They are archetypal earthquakes, the unconscious itself shaking our surface reality, dragging us where self-awareness can no longer be avoided. In myth, abduction is never a choice. Hades does not ask, he claims. The descent is not chosen, it is imposed. And yet hidden in this violence is the seed of healing. For only when the persona shatters can shadow work begin, stripping away illusions, forcing us to face the raw, unpolished truth of existence. Think of the moment you first faced your own abyss. The phone call that shattered everything. The silence after words that ended a chapter of your life. These are not prisons, they are gates. Though when you stand at their threshold, it feels like everything is lost. Persephone's crown of flowers falls into the dust, trampled by hooves of inevitability. And still, within this fall, the possibility of transformation waits, hidden. She is carried into the dark, trembling yet awake. The garden is gone. The air is heavy. The only sound, chariot wheels grinding against stone. This is when the soul realizes the path of growth does not begin in the light. It descends first into the night, and the night has only just begun. In the heart of the underworld, the silence is not empty, it is full. Persephone arrives trembling, her eyes adjusting to the absence of light. What first feels like death slowly reveals itself as another kind of life. Jungian psychology reminds us, the unconscious does not annihilate, it transforms. But transformation always tastes bitter. The exile, the forced confrontation with what we fear most. There is a banquet waiting in the depths. Not golden fruits, but pomegranate seeds, symbols of binding and of rebirth. To eat them is to accept that innocence is over. And many of us have tasted this fruit without even realizing it. The divorce that marked us forever, the illness that bent our path, the truth we could not unhear. Once swallowed, there is no return. Individuation demands that an old identity must die. Persephone looks around. The inhabitants of the underworld appear, cloaked, masked, distorted, but they are not strangers. They are fragments of herself, the rejected voices, the repressed desires, the shadow buried beneath her springtime smile. To sit among them is to sit among oneself. Healing begins not by fleeing, but by listening. And in their whispers lies the key to the self. Life offers us its own versions of this banquet. The confrontation with an old fear. The moment you realize your anger hides grief. The late night reflection where your own mask finally falls. These are pomegranate seeds, small, bitter, unforgettable. They do not bind you to suffering, they bind you to truth. For growth cannot come without consuming what once repelled you. And so Persephone lifts the red-stained fruit to her lips. She feels the weight of inevitability. The crown she once wore is gone, replaced by a silence that commands presence. She swallows, and in that instant, the girl dies. But in her eyes, something fierce awakens. For the queen is never born in gardens. She is born at the banquet of shadows. And deeper still, something waits. At first, the underworld felt like a prison, cold corridors, endless stone. But as Persephone walks deeper, she notices something strange. The shadows bow when she passes. What once terrified her now recognizes her presence. This is the paradox of shadow work. When we dare to face the darkness, it no longer rules us. The very forces that abducted her now bend, as if acknowledging an authority she has only begun to claim. In life, this moment arrives when pain stops being an enemy and becomes a teacher. The betrayed finds clarity in solitude. The grieving discover compassion, sharpened like a blade. Growth does not come from avoiding wounds. It comes from wearing them as marks of initiation. Like Persephone, we realize we are not powerless captives. We are sovereign beings, learning to reign in the night. And so, a crown begins to form, not of gold, but of resilience. Forged from nights of tears, days of silence, the raw stone of survival. In Jungian psychology, this is individuation, the self rising from fragments once broken. No longer the maiden of spring, Persephone becomes queen of two worlds, one foot in innocence, the other in transformation. Symbols echo through this awakening. The mirror no longer reflects a child, but a woman whose gaze carries depth. The labyrinth, once confusing, now reveals hidden order. Even the monsters of the underworld bow, for she has touched the same darkness within herself. Emotional healing is never gentle. It is a throne carved from the very stone that once caged you. And yet, the journey is not complete. For to awaken in the underworld is only the beginning of sovereignty. The question remains, how to walk again beneath the sun after being crowned in the dark. The answer is not yet clear, but this truth is certain. The queen who rises will never again be the girl who fell. The earth opens once more, and Persephone rises. The air above feels different now, lighter, fragrant with spring. But she no longer belongs to innocence alone. The flowers bloom, yet their beauty no longer deceives her. She carries within her the silence of the underworld, and with it, an authority the world can sense. This is the paradox of transformation. To return to the surface is not to forget the night, but to bring its wisdom into the day. In life, this return appears in quiet moments. The widow laughing for the first time after grief. The betrayed rediscovering joy, yet without losing vigilance. These are not naive joys. They are reborn joys, born from self-awareness. The sun no longer blinds, it illuminates. The world remains fragile, but the soul has grown unshakable roots in the depths. Those around Persephone see the crown upon her head, though they cannot grasp its weight. They wonder why her gaze holds both softness and steel. This is individuation, the integration of shadow and light. of innocence and sovereignty. She has tasted the fruit of darkness, and no season of spring can erase its flavor. And yet, it is this very taste that grants her true power. The myth whispers a truth we often resist. We cannot become whole without dying to who we once were. The unconscious demands descent before ascent, shadow before self. To return without the journey is to remain a child among flowers, but to descend and return is to wear the invisible crown, to embody archetypes that command respect without words. Persephone's story is not tragedy, it is revelation. And so the seasons turn, as they always will. But she is no longer merely the daughter of a goddess. She is the queen who reigns in both worlds, walking in sunlight while carrying the memory of darkness. And that is why the world whispers when she passes. She was never the same queen again. Yet still something deeper waits, for the descent never truly ends. The story does not end with one return. Persephone is bound to the underworld, called back again and again by the seeds she consumed. This is not punishment, it is rhythm. Just as the seasons shift, so too does the soul move through cycles of darkness and light. Jungian psychology recognizes this eternal dance. Individuation is never finished. The unconscious keeps speaking, through dreams, through crises, through whispers that rise from within. In life, the cycle repeats whenever we face new thresholds. A healed wound does not shield us from future pain. It prepares us to meet it differently. A mother who has faced grief guides her child through sorrow. A man who once lost everything no longer fears the silence of empty rooms. Each descent strengthens the crown. Each return deepens healing. Each cycle sharpens awareness of the archetypes at play. Persephone embodies this mystery. She is not only the queen of spring, nor merely the captive of Hades. She is the bridge between realms. She knows joy with the memory of loss. She knows love with the weight of mortality. This duality is her sovereignty. To live only in the light is to remain shallow. To dwell only in the dark is to despair, but to hold both is to become whole, radiant with the power of transformation. The cycle is everywhere. The turning of the year, the waxing and waning of the moon, the rise and fall of empires, the opening and closing of the human heart. To resist is to fracture. To embrace is to flow with the hidden laws of existence. Shadow work is never finished, because the shadow itself evolves. Each stage of life calls us to descend again, each time revealing deeper layers of the self. And so Persephone teaches us. The crown is not a fixed symbol. It is a living process. Every descent strips another mask. Every ascent reveals a new facet of the soul. She is reborn with each cycle, never the same, never final. And as long as the earth turns, the queen will walk between worlds, whispering to all who dare listen. To find your crown, you must go down first. And still, one more secret waits. In the end, Persephone's myth is not only hers, it is ours. Every time you are pulled into despair, silence, or uncertainty, you walk her path. Every return to joy carries the echo of her ascent. And if you listen closely, you will hear the same truth she discovered. The power you seek is not found by avoiding the abyss. It is born by walking through it. with open eyes. Jungian psychology reminds us the self is forged in this alchemy where shadow and light weave together as one. Look closely at your own life. The crown is already forming. It hides in your scars, in the resilience you never asked for, in the nights you thought you would not survive, but did. The unconscious does not whisper through comfort. It speaks through trials. Every time you bend without breaking, you forge a throne invisible to others, but undeniable within. This is the slow, secret coronation of the soul. Persephone gazes into the mirror of the underworld, and for the first time she sees herself, not only the child of Demeter, not only the captive of Hades, but the queen who holds both titles without contradiction. This is self-awareness, the moment that changes everything. When you see yourself fully, even your wounds become jewels in the crown, shining with the memory of what you have endured. Every myth hides a call. Persephone's call is simple and terrifying. Do not flee the descent. Do not fear the silence. Do not turn from the night, for within them lies the key to your awakening. Archetypes do not exist to entertain. They demand transformation. And this one demands that you look in the mirror until you see both your light and your abyss, and bow to both. And so, the circle closes, only to open again. Persephone walks between worlds, and so will you. For once you have worn the crown forged in darkness, you can never again live as if you were only a child of spring. The story is not over. It is lived each day, in your choices, in your shadows, in your quiet acts of courage. And somewhere deep within, the whisper remains. She was never the same queen again. Now you know the truth hidden in Persephone's descent. No crown is ever given in the light. It is forged in the dark, where silence carves strength into the soul. But the question remains, will you dare to face your own underworld? Or will you keep wandering among flowers, pretending the ground beneath your feet will never open? Ask yourself, which shadows have you been fleeing? Which wounds still whisper your name at night? And what would happen if just once, instead of running, you listened? Healing is never born from denial. It comes from the courage to sit at the banquet of shadows and eat the seeds of truth. The unconscious waits patiently, but it always collects its due. Remember this: every fall you survived has already crowned you in secret. You are not who you once were, and you will never again be the same. This is the mystery of individuation. You do not become someone new. You become fully yourself, a sovereign of both light and shadow. And from that place, no storm can unseat you. So as you leave this story, do not leave unchanged. Carry its mirror with you. Let Persephone's myth echo in your choices, your silences, your quiet acts of courage. And when life drags you once more into the abyss, remember, the queen rises not despite the descent, but because of it. And if this story spoke to your depths, let it not end here. Subscribe, stay close, and walk with me on this journey of self-awareness, archetypes, and inner transformation. For the descent never truly ends, and together we can learn to wear the crown it offers.